morning, Cycle Breakers. This is Pastor C, and I want to welcome you back to Cycle Breaking Monday. This is the place where you hear tools and topics that will help you break out of negative cycles and move into positive seasons of your life. Guaranteed, if you apply the principles, if you apply the teachings, if you do the assessments that I put every now and then, this is a learning place, a place for you to grow and to become your most authentic person. And I am your cheerleader, and you know that, right? Listen, our motto for Cycle Breakers for Life is a new life emerges when negative cycles are broken. When they're broken, we want to keep the positive ones in place, but we want to break those negative ones. So we've been in a series called Deliverance is My Portion. And we've been talking about how deliverance is your portion. It is what God guarantees you. It's what He has for you. It's what He's assigned for you. It's what He's purposed for your life. And so, welcome on in. Get ready. Go grab your notebook, grab a pen. And if you need to, I want you to text somebody, tag a friend, tag a sister, tag a brother, because Cycle Breakers for Life is for high functioning men and women. We help them to break out of negative cycles, right? And so I am a life coach. I am a breakthrough transformational life coach. And I am your sister and definitely your friend. So thank you for coming in. And if this is your first time being with us here on Cycle Breaking Monday, then please make sure you leave your comments, leave your aha moments, leave your thumbs up. Good evening, Mother Cheryl Payne. Good to see you on tonight. Thank you for coming in. I see a few of you here, but sometimes I cannot see you until you put your a comment or a thumbs up or something in the chat. So listen, we're going to dive right in because I'm excited to deliver to you what God has put in my heart, because this is going to be transformational. So again, grab your notebook, get a pen, because tonight we're talking about something that affects every area of your life. Every area, every area. Your relationships, your finances, your career, your purpose. Good to see you tonight, Aisha. Welcome on in. Your purpose, your influence. Tonight we're talking about your behavior. Now, before we go there, let's review where we've been. Week 1, we established that deliverance is my portion. We learned that deliverance is not just being brought out of something spiritual. Deliverance is being brought out of anything that keeps you from becoming who God created you to be. And then we spent 2 weeks talking about the mind, because every cycle begins with a thought. And then we spent 2 more weeks talking about emotions, because thoughts create emotions. That's right. And emotions, guess what? They influence your decisions. So tonight we're talking about behavior, because behavior is what happens when thoughts and emotions go unchecked long enough. In other words, your behavior is often visible fruit of invisible issues. I'll say it again. Your behavior is often the visible fruit of invisible issues. The behavior isn't the root. The behavior is the evidence. So I want you to drop in the chat tonight. Good to see you tonight, Aisha. Good to see you. Gigi, Teresa Butler. Good to see you tonight. That's my baby sister. And I thank God for you on tonight. So your behavior is, I want you to drop in the chat. My behavior is a clue. It's not my identity. Okay. My behavior is a clue. All right. Like the mystery movies, you see them little clues of something that's about to happen or who's really guilty, right? Behavior is a clue, but it's not my identity. I'm gonna get you typing on tonight. Y'all know y'all can type fast on them iPhones and them computers, right? So come on, type it in the chat. All right. Behavior is my clue, not my identity. So excuse me. So tonight's big truth is this: that many people, you and I, we want God to change their lives, right? We want God to change our lives without changing our behavior. Some people pray for healthy relationships, but continue communicating poorly. They pray for financial breakthrough, but they continue spending impulsively. All right. They pray for peace, but continue feeding chaos. They pray for promotion, but continue showing up inconsistently. Right. So, here, Pastor C tonight, your behavior is often introducing you before your words do. And many people are trying to cast out what they need to confront. Yes, get in its face. Romans 7:15 in the NIV says what Paul was writing to the church at Rome. He says, "For what am I doing? For what I am doing, excuse me, I do not understand. For what I will to do, that I do not practice, but what I hate, that I do." I'm gonna read it again. Romans 7 and 15. Paul is writing here, and he says, "For what I am doing, I do not understand. For what I will to do, that I do not practice. But what I hate, that I do." Oh my God. Whew, that is deep, right? Paul is describing a battle, all right, that many of us know well. It's like we say things like, I know better. I've learned better. I've heard the teaching, but I keep doing the same thing over and over again. Anybody ever been there before? You said, I'm not going to react like that anymore. And then you reacted. You said, I'm not going back there again. And then you went back. And you said, I'm going to handle this situation differently. And then when it came up, you handled it the exact same way. And that's, I have to say it, that's the frustration of behavioral cycles. When we talk about behavioral cycles, I have to talk about Peter, the disciple, because Peter is one of the greatest examples of someone whose behavior often betrayed his potential. I mean, he had great potential. He loved Jesus, he followed Jesus. Peter was gifted, he was called, he was chosen. Yet, my brother Peter struggled with behavior. He was impulsive. You hear me? And when soldiers came to arrest Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, guess what Peter did? Y'all know he pulled out a sword, right? He reacted before he thought. He was defensive and he was emotionally driven. He was inconsistent. I mean, one moment he was walking on water and the next moment he's sinking. One moment he's declaring, "Thou art the Christ." And the next moment Jesus says, "Get thee behind me, Satan." One moment he's promising loyalty to the Lord. And the next moment he's denying Christ 3 times. And here's what I love. Jesus never threw Peter away because of his behavior. He transformed him because behavior can change. All right. So drop in the chat transformation. My transformation is possible. My transformation is possible. It's good to see you tonight, Aisha. Good to see you. So, when we talk about behavior, we have to ask, what is behavior? So behavior is the actions, reactions, habits, patterns, and responses that repeatedly show up in your life. All right. Behavior is not who you are. Behavior is what you do. And what you repeatedly do, it becomes a pattern. And guess what? Patterns become cycles, and cycles become lifestyles. I'll say it again. Patterns become cycles, and cycles become lifestyle. And that's why this matter. It's what I call the behavior loop. All right. So let's connect everything. We learned that, and this is the behavior loop. Thoughts create emotions. Emotions influence behavior. Behavior creates results, and results reinforce your beliefs. And then the cycle repeats. So an example is like a thought. You might be thinking, I'm not good enough. Well, the emotion that's produced is insecurity. The behavior is you don't apply for the job, you don't speak up in the conversation, or you stay hidden. The result is you miss opportunities. And the belief, you say to yourself, see, I knew I wasn't good enough. And the cycle repeats. Do you see it? The behavior was never the beginning, the behavior was the manifestation. The behavior was the manifestation. So, when we ask the question, why do people develop negative behaviors? I want to share some points with you. And the first point is, and we're going to dive into this, why do people develop negative behaviors? And the first thing is that some behaviors are learned. Many of us are doing what we saw other people do in our life. Our parents, our grandparents, people on our job, people in our church, right? Many of us, we're doing what we saw, not what we chose, what we saw. Some people learned, they learned anger. They learned yelling by the environments they lived in. They learned to avoid or the avoidance tactics, manipulation, or poor communication. unhealthy spending, procrastination, because that's what was modeled before them. That's what they saw. That's what they took in. That's what they consumed. That's what they embraced. We don't automatically do what we're taught. We often do what we witnessed. All right. Sometimes the greatest teacher is one who teaches by example. So if that's true, then some behaviors that we pick up are picked up by example, by what's in front of us. All right. The second thing is survival behavior. So we just talked about learned behavior. Now we're going to talk about survival behavior. This one is deep because some behaviors were developed to survive pain. Ooh, God. Because we want to avoid the pain, or we want to overcome the pain. We want to numb the pain, right? So instead of facing the pain and going through what we need to go through in order to be healed and delivered, we start people pleasing. All right. This is not to hurt anybody's feelings, but hopefully, if it connects to you, that you'll get a deliverance on today. People pleasing, perfectionism. We build up emotional walls. Sometimes we're not happy unless we're controlling everything, or we're avoiding conflict. We refuse to have the conversation because we don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. We don't want anybody to feel bad. We don't want anybody to feel like I'm trying to be better than that, like you're trying to be better than they are, right? Or you shut down emotionally. You just shut down. You don't want to deal with it. You just kind of blank out, become invisible. Though you're in the room, you just like shut down. Body language is strong now, but you just shut down emotionally. And at one point, these behaviors, they may have protected you, but now guess what? You've got to realize that they're limiting you. I mean, what protected you in one season can actually imprison you in another. All right. Maybe there was a time you needed to avoid the conflict. Maybe there was a time that you needed to control some things, or maybe a time you had to be a perfectionist in a particular area. Maybe you had to set a boundary that caused you to put up an emotional wall, but maybe that was just for a season. But now that you've matured and now that you've grown, you find that shutting down emotionally actually, uh, uh, where it protected you, now it becomes your prison. All right. They're limiting you. It's like it's got bars and you can't get out. Even though you built it, you can't get out of it unless the Lord helps you get out of it. I want to pause here and look at some of our comments. Um, Aisha says people pleasing, and Cheryl says, yes, sometimes I fall into that survival behavior. This is definitely deep, right? Because survival behavior, I believe we all have done it before. I know I have. It's what your brain does. The amygdala. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. How it releases that stress hormone, and it looks for anything that's dangerous, or any situation that looks similar to a time that you were hurt or disappointed or frustrated or angry, or someone handled you incorrectly. The amygdala will actually release a stress hormone that causes you to put up a barrier, to shut down emotionally, to try to self sabotage. I mean, it's the brain's way of trying to protect you. But you'll find out that we have to unlearn that behavior because it actually is building a prison for you to live inside of. And we don't want to be in prison. The Bible says, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. So we don't need to imprison ourselves. We need to let ourselves go free. And I say that because the problem with a lot of us is not other people, it's because we haven't forgiven ourselves. It's because we haven't given ourselves permission to step out of the prison that we created for ourselves and to seek God for total freedom and deliverance. We haven't acknowledged the fact that, yes, I have a behavior problem in this area. Yes, I have a behavior problem in this area. And when you hear the word behavior problems or behavior cycle, we feel like, we think about the kid in the classroom that was always cutting up, always going to timeout, always going to the principal's office, right? The kid that's always blowing the spitballs, or the kid that's always threatening to hurt somebody, the kid that's the bully. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about behaviors that you've learned, either from number one, learned behavior, or two, survival, right? So that leads me into number three, which is trauma-based behavior, right? The event is over. What caused you trauma is over. It's over. And I think about my sister Aisha. Aisha, if you don't, you're not visible, so I don't have time to ask your permission. So I know you, so I'm sure you will not mind. Aisha has had to have surgery, brain surgery, several times. And from that surgery, maybe there were different indications that made her feel like After the last one, it was very successful. She's been doing good. You are, thank you, Aisha. She says, I'm fine. She's doing good. She's doing better than she's done, in the past. She's got good doctor's reports. But I'm sure that there are times that certain things have happened that cause that fear to come back up. And maybe she may have started to be careful where she didn't need to be careful because now the road is clearer where before it wasn't clear. And that's trauma-based behavior. The event is over, but the behavior remains. Sometimes, we've been hurt by people, we've been wounded by people, and the betrayal happened years ago, but you still don't trust. The rejection happened years ago, but you still expect people to leave, right? You know, um, they're gone. They didn't choose you. They will never choose you. They never wanted to choose you, right? I did a teaching a while back that told you three areas that you need to know people fall into. They will love you, they will like you, or they will tolerate you. All right. People will either love you, like you, or tolerate you, right? And so, when people do reject you, they love you, yes, they like you and tolerate you. Those two areas right there, those areas fall into that rejection area that we can kind of embrace it as they don't like me, or they don't choose me, or they don't appreciate me, or they are mean to me, or they look down on me, right? That's rejection, and it's a biggie, right? And so when that happens, when you see similar things, or you interact with people, or you fail to interact with people, it's because you expect people to leave. Yes, it is a residual effect. It is something, even though you're over it, even though you've come into a new place, the residuals of that situation is still there. It's like when I do my balloon decor, after I do it, I take what I call balloon shine and I spray it on the balloons, and it makes the balloons pop. It makes them shine, like makes them look like brand new, and it just does something awesome to the display. And this last time I did a job, it was black and gold and beautiful black and gold draping to it. And I sprayed the balloons and they looked beautiful. And I got all my stuff together and was rolling it out. And then I started sliding across the floor. You know what? I forgot to put a tarp down on the floor while I was spraying. So that oily film, the residual effect, even though the balloons were beautiful, the residuals would have caused someone to fall. Woo, that'll preach right there, right? Watch out for the residual effect, because the bottom line is the residuals. I didn't see it on the floor, but it was there. All right. I couldn't smell it on the floor, but it was there. And sometimes what we've gone through, I thank you, Aisha, for that. There is a residual effect that happens because we've been hurt and we've been wounded. And that's the thing that you've got to watch out for. It's the thing you can't see. It's the thing you can't feel. It's the thing that you can't smell. It's the thing you can't hear, but it's there. It's in your psyche. It's in your emotions. It's in your memory of what happened, who did it, how it made you feel, how it made you react, how it made you shut down. The residual effects can be more detrimental to you than the actual event, because you will cause that situation to be applied to every person that comes along in your life. They can tell you all day long, you can trust me. I'm not them. But when you see them, something about them reminds you of that person, their voice, their sound, the perfume that they wear. It triggers you, and before you know it, you're responding in an old behavior according to what happened to you in your past. And that is the prison that you've got to come out of. You got to realize not everybody that God sends into your life is going to be like the person who rejected you, the person that hurt you, the person that wounded you, the person that damaged you, the person abused you. They're not that person. And that's where you've got to give them the chance that they deserve. Because what happens is we block our own blessings, all right? The rejection happened years ago, but you still expect people to leave. The hurt is gone, the behavior stayed, all right? And so if I put this into perspective as a life coach, and I put my life coaching hat on, I've taught you this, and I want you to remember that the brain loves efficiency. All right. Your brain wants to conserve energy. It don't want to have to work overtime. So every time you repeat a behavior, your brain strengthens that pathway. All right. The more you repeat the behavior, the more automatic it becomes. And this is called a neural pathway. And that's why some people keep doing things that they hate. Not because they want to, because their brain has practiced it over and over and over again. And what is practiced becomes permanent unless intentionally changed. All right. So drop this in the chat. What I practice grows. What I practice grows. All right. So if what you practice grows, then you have to do the opposite of what has grown in the soil of your life that's negative. You've got to do the opposite of it. You've got to trust again. You've got to love again. You've got to forgive again. You've got to give again. You've got to hope again. You got to wish again. You've got to expect God to show up in great ways in your life. What I practice grows. And that's not always in the negative, in the positive. You've got to plant positive seeds, positive thoughts, positive actions, positive behaviors in your life so that you can grow and experience the goodness of God. So let me just be real, okay? Because there are some signs that may show that you need deliverance in your behavior. For instance, you might be repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Maybe you react before you think. Maybe you sabotage opportunities. Good opportunities come up, but you sabotage them. You go to work late, or you overeat, or you fail to make that phone call. You fail to fill out the resume or the application. You keep attracting the same relationships, and you realize that relationship is not the best relationship for you. But at least you know what to expect from that type of person. So you open yourself up, knowing that the red flags are all over the place, right? But because you know what to expect, or because you've grown to feel like the only kind of relationship that I'm worthy of is to be abused mentally, or to be abused physically, or to be talked down to, or not to be considered in opinions, right? And so you keep opening yourself up to the same people. People keep giving you the same feedback. You open yourself up to the same people to speak into your life. And maybe your life is not matching your intentions. Awareness, my friends, precedes your change. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. You've got to acknowledge that something, by golly, has got to change in my life, and this behavior has got to go. This is where it gets real, because many people lose relationships not because they're bad people. They lose relationships because they never address their behavior. And I hate to say this, but sometimes we blame everybody else for the reason why something didn't work. Some of us are good at blaming everybody else, and we never, never, never inspect our own fruit. We never inspect the way we talk, the way we react, the way we think. Some people hold conversations with themselves, even though the person is standing there. Just talking, and never giving that other person time to even interject. Some people just they lie. Instead of telling the truth about what they feel. You heard them say something that they totally say, I didn't say it, and they did, and they know they did, and they rearrange things, and they alter conversations, and they misappropriate what you said. I mean, oh my gosh. Some people, they lose relationships because they never address their own behavior. People become defensive, and that destroys trust, or they withdraw, which destroys your intimacy. And control, oh my gosh, it destroys your connection. If you're the type of person that always got to be in control, then guess what? You're not going to be connected to that person too long. Because even though they may be there in mind and body, they've separated from you. They might be there in the house, but they really are not connected because they don't want to be controlled, right? Criticism, always criticizing something that somebody does, it destroys your communication. As soon as they see you coming, they know you coming with a problem. Instead of coming with a solution, here she comes, right? Avoidance, it destroys resolution. Avoiding the problem does not cause an agreement to be settled or something to be settled. You avoiding telling the truth, you avoiding receiving truth about yourself, it doesn't bring about a resolution. It actually complicates the situation more. Behavior determines trust, all right? It determines communication, intimacy, teamwork, connection, all right? Many people think, if I had more money, if I had more support, if I had more opportunity, right? But often success is blocked by behavior, procrastination, inconsistency, Poor discipline habits, right? Fear of failure, fear of success, which is definitely, you're used to not having. So when something good happens, you sabotage it because you don't know what it feels like to be successful. Or how about just quitting too soon? You started out and it feels good, but hey, I'm afraid of what might gonna happen and just forget it. You shut it down. Behavior creates your outcomes. All right. But this is how we experience deliverance, right? And we're going to talk about this some more on next week. But you need to identify the behavior, not the excuse. Identify the behavior. All right. And I've said a whole lot tonight, but identify the behavior. All right. Behavior determines your trust. Behavior determines trust. Yes, avoidance destroys resolution. Self-sabotage, right? Identify the behavior. What is the behavior? Things that I've listed. If you need to go back and look through the video again with your notes, go ahead. And I have 30 minutes. So I know sometimes I'll be talking fast, but I'll be trying to get this out, right? Identify the trigger. Is it fear? Is it rejection? Is it stress? Is it insecurity? Right? Step 3, replace the behavior. Don't just stop, replace it with something else. All right. If you are um, um, avoiding, right? And you know that you're avoiding the conflict, right? Don't just say, all right, I'm not going to avoid. No, you need to replace it with, all right, I'm going to step up and I'm going to have this conversation. And even though it may be uncomfortable, Lord, give me how to talk to this person, right? Replace the behavior. And step 4 is practice the replacement repeatedly. Do it over and over and over again. If you have to, practice in your mirror, right? New behavior creates new pathways. And step 5 is remain accountable. All right. Because what is monitored improves, right? So remain accountable to somebody. That's why we're here on Cycle Breakers for Life. My email address is scrolling right across the screen, newlife@cyclebreakersforlife.net. You have an issue, you want a life coach, get a 15 minutes consultation with me, a free consultation with me, and I will, lay out the framework of how I could help you. If it's something I could really address with you, take you through a life coaching program. Just don't refuse to deal with it. Remain accountable to somebody. Everybody needs an accountability partner. Okay. What is monitored, it does improve. When you know that there's a behavior that needs to be changed, monitor it, right? It's like a person that's sick. When they're in the hospital, they hook them up to all these IVs and stuff. Why? Because something is not right in their system. So they hook them up to IVs. One IV gets medicine. IV is a saline solution drip that they put the medication in. Another, maybe they got oxygen in their nose, and then the nurse comes in and monitors everything, reads the blood pressure, reads their oxygen levels, looks at how they're responding to the medicine. What is your pain level? Is when they're being monitored, right? And that's what you have to do strategically in your own situation. Write it down. This is the behavior I want to work on. This is what I want to work on. How am I going to address this behavior? And what are my steps to walking this out? How am I going to know that I'm changing, right? Listen, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. 3 times. But Peter's failure was not his final identity. Jesus didn't just forgive Peter, Jesus transformed Peter, right? The impulsive man became a leader. The reactive man became a preacher. The inconsistent man became a pillar of the church. And if Peter can change, so can you. So drop it in the chat. My behavior is changing. My behavior is changing. Why? Because your behavior may explain where you've been, but it does not have to determine where you're going. Deliverance in your behavior is your portion, and the cycle ends with you. So, next week, we're going to talk about how to be delivered in your behavior. And we're going to get practical and talk about habits, accountability. We're going to talk about discipline, boundaries, routines, and how transformation becomes a lifestyle. All right. So, this right here has been exciting. It is one of those teachings that you really do have to embrace. It's one of those things that we can't say, I don't have something that I need to change, right? My behavior is changing. Why? Because I'm addressing it. And I'm not just addressing it, but I am monitoring it. I'm putting steps in motion because I don't want this negative behavior to be a part of my identity any longer. I want change in my life. All right, permanent change. And it's not about people. It's not about what they think about me. It's about what I know to be true about myself. All right. It's about self examination because this is the season, this is the time to be honest. We want change, we want elevation, we want God to anoint us, we want God to use us. But our behaviors can sometimes be the very reason why that God is not doing the next thing in our life because we fail to be honest with ourselves. So, listen, I hope that this blessed you on tonight and it blessed me. There are some things that I need to change about myself, right? We were asked a question today in the Herpreneur Network, and it was, what issue do you need to address in your own life? And you know what I said? I shared that for many years, I have always esteemed everyone else higher than myself. Yeah. I've always felt like God loved everyone else better than myself. In fact, I was taught that as a kid, and so I grew up feeling that way. So I found myself esteeming everyone higher, than myself. They didn't have. I was pushing them, and you should support people, but to the point that I was shrinking back. I was not having the conversations. I wasn't feeling worthy. I wasn't feeling like this was for me because I'm not them. I can't do this because they don't think I can. I would never advance because they said I wouldn't, right? But I came to a place where I had to find me, right? I had to find me. And when I say find me, I had to embrace my gifts, my talents, my anointing, my purpose, my why. And I realized that behavior was causing people to reject me because I was the one shrinking back. They weren't pushing me back. I was thinking that they were pushing me back. I was assuming that they were pushing me back. And that assumption became a behavior. I was shrinking back. And so now, as I'm moving ahead in life, I'm asking God to help me change that behavior. Do I still esteem people? Yes, but I realize that I have a purpose too. And I have a voice too. And I have an anointing too and a calling too. And I'm fitted into the body of Christ. And you, my friend, need to know that too. So, this is Pastor C, your breakthrough transformational coach, your sister and your friend. And I pray that you'll return next week because I'm going to give you some more solutions, some ways to confront this behavior situation. And hopefully, you'll come out of timeout and you will actually thrive as the woman, the man of God that you are called to be. So until next week, thank you so much, G. Good to see you. She says, I enjoyed tonight's message. Aisha says, thank you. Cheryl says, great lesson. And I see you all typing, my behavior is changing. My behavior is changing. Listen, next week, I want you to help me build build our audience. Share with somebody else. When we're in the live, just do the at symbol and type that person's name in, and they'll get the notification that we are live here on Cycle Breaking Monday. So we're a team, right? And because we're a team, you know where I'm at. I'm on the sidelines of your journey and I'm cheering for you because the Cycle Breakers cheer is contagious. And though the devil knows our name, when we cheer, we change the game. So address that behavior and cheer for your success. God bless you. And prayerfully, I'll see you next Monday for Cycle Breaking Monday, where we do part 2 of Deliverance in My Behavior. God bless you. Bye-bye.